Now to a story you will only see on News 5. The FBI recommending a grief counseling service based here in Colorado Springs for people impacted by the Return to Nature funeral home. The Voices of Grief Support and Education Center offering their services at a free or reduced cost. News 5's Eleanor Sheehan spoke with their executive director today. Eleanor in studio with more on how they're trying to help these victims through this grieving process. Eleanor?
Around 30 people have already reached out to the Voices of Grief to get connected to their services. They tell me they're anticipating even more. They are providing trauma therapists, grief counselors, and a better support system.
To say this is complicated grief is kind of an understatement.
Kathy Sparnans and her team at Voices of Grief Support and Education Center are assisting families who are victims of the Return to Nature funeral home.
The FBI has given our names along with the Lyda Hill Foundation here in town as folks to respond to these families. And both of our agencies feel a huge responsibility.
This week, the owners of the funeral home were arrested. Kathy says this will help people begin to heal.
In terms of the families being traumatized, part of what they need is justice. They need to know that somebody's going to be held accountable for this huge betrayal.
She says losing someone is incredibly difficult, but this circumstance creates another layer of trauma.
An added trauma has now reopened the first grief and then has opened an additional wound. So it's two levels of grief.
What are just some tools that might help people going through this grieving process?
I just say grief is not meant to be done alone. You're not meant to sit in a room by yourself or go in the closet.
Kathy suggests finding a close friend or confidant that will listen.
What you need is someone who's comfortable in their own skin to just sit with you and listen to what's going on and say, I hear you.
She says if you don't have that person, people can call them.
You are not reaching out to some expert that knows more than you. You're reaching out to us because we are companions and we understand that grief is natural.
Kathy says be kind to yourself and have compassion for others. She says it can be uncomfortable, but it's important for people to go through all of the emotions.
Feeling what you feel does not mean you are weak. I think it's really the other way around. I think you have the courage to feel what you feel.
Kathy is honored to work with these families and do what she can to help them.
We are really all trying to walk each other home.
She says grief is a lifelong process, but she has more tools to help.
They are having a candlelight vigil at the end of November for families impacted. Kathy says they are also starting a grief group specifically for people affected by the Return to Nature investigation. That will begin in January. To get connected to those services, you can reach out to Voices of Grief via their website, and we have a link to that at KOAA.com.